Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tiesenghausen. July 20th. Here are the main news stories at this moment. Another huge warehouse is on fire in the Russian Federation after a drone attack. We're talking about a warehouse located in Domodedovo in the Yuzhny Vrata Industrial Park. It's simply a gigantic warehouse with a total area of over 650,000 square meters. It is located right next to two important transport arteries, the M4 Don Highway and the A107 road. In other words, it's a major hub for distributing imported goods throughout Moscow and the European part of Russia. But now, the most interesting part is that Chinese suppliers rent a huge area in this warehouse. Literally, over the past 2 years, they have significantly expanded their presence at this warehouse. That is, at least 3 Chinese tenants who by June of this year had already leased a total of more than 74,000 square meters of this warehouse. Overall, the Yuzhny Vrata Logistics Park is the perfect candidate for the supply and storage of dual-use goods from various countries. And the cherry on top, it's a real whopper. This Yuzhny Vrata warehouse is actually under the control of the Talent and Success Foundation. One of the founders of this foundation is the cellist Sergei Roldugin. He is a close friend and the wallet of the Putin family. And Putin himself is connected to this foundation. Talent and Success. I don't know how Putin is connected to Talent and Success, but he is connected to the foundation through its board of trustees. So here it's a direct double blow, both to the military wallet and to the family wallet of old man Kabayev. At the same time, the crazy old man, I think, will be simply furious. I wonder what Kabaeva is thinking right now. She'll probably tear out the last tufts of hair from his balding head, since part of the Kabaev inheritance is gone. Today it went up in flames. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important. You can do it right now without putting it off. We are fighting against Putin's propaganda, but together we can do it much more effectively. So make sure to subscribe. And let me remind you, this is already the Moscow region without a doubt. In yesterday's episode, I talked about how on the Wildberries marketplace you can easily buy both FPV drone components and spools of fiber optic cable for FPV. Basically, there are tons of dual-use goods. In other words, to put it simply, these are those huge warehouses. Now, not only Wildberries, but also Ozon. This is the largest military supply store in the Russian Federation. Well, now let's get to the main point. Let's move on to the warehouses. Wildberries and then Ozon and all these gates, the southern gates, the northern gates and other gates will be gone. They will burn down in the near future. I think you've noticed that the wheel of retribution is only spinning faster when it comes to the Russian Federation. A question for Russians, some of whom have lost goods worth millions there and more. Are you aware? Do you realize why? What is the main reason this is happening? And one more question. Do you think anyone was saved, those who had goods there, or suffered losses? Did the 40 ballistic missiles that were launched at Kyiv help anyone? Did that help anyone? Do you feel any warmer because of it? Did it make things better for you? Did you get back the money you lost? Maybe you started living more peacefully? No? Will it only get more alarming? It's all very simple. Ukraine will completely destroy oil refineries in Russia. It will wipe out the warehouses as well. And not just those. Wildberries will wipe out the tanker fleet in the Black Sea, just like it was already destroyed in the Azov Sea. Closer to winter, Ukraine will completely destroy substations and thermal power plants, unless you get out of Ukraine. So there are already means to wipe all this out, but we'll talk about what those means are a bit later, by the way. And here's another extremely unpleasant surprise for the Russians. Well, as for the Ukrainians, they are performing an incredible feat. They have, in fact, asymmetrically turned the tide of this war. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. We will keep helping until victory, and in this episode, we are raising funds for vehicle repairs for the soldiers of the first separate assault regiment named after hero of Ukraine Dmytro Kotsiubailo, the legendary Da Vinci. They are fighting in the Zaporizhzhia direction. They need help with vehicle repairs right now.
Бажаємо здоров'я. Ми, бійці підрозділу радіоелектронної боротьби 1-го окремого штурмового полку імені Героя України Дмитра Коцюбайла Да Вінчі, знову звертаємось до вас, пане Борисе, до ваших підписників за допомогою у зборі коштів на ремонт нашої автомобільної техніки. Будемо щиро вдячні кожному вашому донату. Адже кожний ваш донат – це важливий крок до перемоги. Разом ми велика сила, разом ми Україна. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Let's help our warriors. The link to donate is in the description of this video. There are options for Mono, Private, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. And the QR code in the corner is for those watching on other channels. The QR code always leads to the donation page. Thank you so much to everyone who helps our warriors and everyone who supports Ukraine. Thank you from me and from dozens of units you have already helped. You are incredible. For Russians, there's some more important information, perhaps about the situation. Now Putin is getting angry, the southern gates have been burned, and now, as I'll show, everything will burn, and Podolsk will burn too. They won't have time to take anything out of there. Not goods, not those fiber optic coils, not drones. None of that will change the situation. Not 20, not 30, not 40 ballistic missiles that you launch. It will have absolutely no effect on Ukraine, because for 5 years now, missiles and drones have been launched at Ukraine. In other words, ballistic missiles have been flying constantly, not just this year. And cruise missiles too. But in the end, even more drones are flying back there to the Russian Federation. With each passing month, more and more. And now missiles are flying from Flamingo, and soon ballistic missiles will be launched as well. Let me give you a simple example. In 2022, the Russians destroyed all our oil refineries. They just thought it was funny and laughed back then. Z-blogger said, "That's it, how will Ukraine fight now? Ukraine is left without fuel, that's it, they're finished." So what happened in the end? In the end, it was Russia that was left without fuel. In other words, Ukraine reorganized its logistics so that even though we have no oil refineries, we still have fuel. But Russia simply cannot physically reorganize its logistics like that. That is, there isn't that much free fuel in the world. There aren't that many countries in the world willing to risk sanctions. There isn't enough fuel for Russia to be able to buy it up. And there's nothing to replace the capacities that have been put out of commission. Yes, they'll buy a little extra, but that won't save the situation. By the way, today in Podolsk, an oil depot was also set on fire. Right now, Moscow is surviving only thanks to fuel from other regions. All 4 refineries that supplied Moscow have been shut down. You see, it hasn't even been that long, and already the Moscow region is burning in a blaze, and it's burning seriously. It's only going to get worse from here. But I think even some Russians no longer argue with this fact. You can see how the situation is deteriorating, really deteriorating. More are being added. First it was the refineries, then the fleet in the Azov Sea, and then in the Black Sea as well. The Black Sea fleet has already fled. It can't even protect itself anymore. Now warehouses have been added to the list. Everything will burn. In other words, Ukraine will methodically, systematically, without hysteria and with a cool head, destroy everything. Military-industrial complex facilities, oil refineries, massive military supply stores, the energy sector, and more. Well, now for the second piece of bad news. I would say a very bad piece of news for some Russians. You know, like in that famous movie, The Second Sad Figure. Take a look at this video. Beautiful. This video is from the company Firepoint. Do you know what this is? This is the launch of a Ukrainian solid fuel rocket, which Russians will soon see for themselves. And by the way, as you may have noticed, this is not a flamingo. By the way, even Russian propagandists themselves are now saying that Ukraine will wipe everything out completely. Do you know how quickly Solovyov changed his tune? So look, the main scumbag of Russian TV, Solovyov, do you know what he said? He warned about upcoming strikes against Russian energy infrastructure, but he also called for relocating residents of the Bryansk and Kursk regions to other areas. So, the foul-mouthed scoundrel declared that right now, I'll quote, "a most difficult situation has arisen in a number of Russian cities, and of course in the occupied territories as well." According to Solovyov, we're talking about 200,000 to 400,000 people living in the Kursk and Bryansk regions, as well as in the occupied parts of Donetsk and Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions. And Solovyov says, but they are de facto living on the front line. What's stopping us from taking these people, giving them the opportunity to come and live properly in a new place, says Solovyov. And then he says the following. A hectare in the Far East, the Urals, the Volga region, they can be resettled all over the country. After all, we don't abandon our own. He also called for preparations for Ukrainian strikes on the energy infrastructure of the Russian Federation. Wow. And what was stopping them from just taking people to their Far Eastern hectare without even starting the war? Or I don't know, somewhere else to their vast territory? 17 million square kilometers. Everyone who wanted this Russian world, go live happily there on your Far Eastern hectare. 2/3 of the territory in the Russian Federation is uninhabited and undeveloped. So take all this riffraff from all over the world. Take them, settle them there, and live on your hectare. Do whatever you want on that hectare. With the money that Putin used to destroy Ukrainian cities, the money he spent on the war, he could have simply built cities in Russia. He could have made dreams come true, given away apartments there for free to anyone who wanted them. But no, he chose to destroy what belongs to others instead of building his own. By the way, I think many of you noticed that there was a massive outcry in Russia after problems with fuel began. After they started losing money because of burned goods in warehouses or maybe because of other products, the fact that 1.5 million Russians have been killed or maimed, the fact that Ukrainian cities have been wiped off the face of the earth, none of that bothered anyone at all. And do you know why their maimed and killed fellow citizens didn't bother them? Probably because everyone in Russia understands that they're going to fight not for some homeland but for money, that it's their choice. That's just the path they chose to take. Yes, there was a risk. Well, they went, and that's how they make their living. That's why nobody needs them. No one feels sorry for them. In Russia, they write things like "our boys" or something like that. Complete nonsense. What do you mean, your boys? They're all going to die for money. By the way, those who write "our boys" probably haven't had these inglorious bastards die in their own families. Because it turns out, what does a confirmed death in the war mean? The death of such a brute is almost a celebration in the family, because the family receives huge payouts. So nobody cares about them. Well, and no one is forgetting about the tanker fleet and the occupied Crimea. That night, Ukraine's unmanned systems forces continued a series of operations against Russian military, energy, and maritime infrastructure. 7 ships of the Russian fleet lost, 3 tankers, 4 bulk carriers. In the Black and Azov Seas, plus, here's an important point, 6 elements of the air defense system were destroyed on Russian territory. Very, very serious elements in the area of Yeysk and Primorsko-Akhtarsk. In short, on their way to the Russian tankers' anchorage in the Black Sea, our drones took out even more. And here are the air defense systems involved. Tor-2 M-SAM system, R-2 Nebo-SV radar station, Nebo-U radar station, Castor-2 E2 and Gamma S1 M1. So these are extremely serious air defense elements. By the way, if we sum up the operation so far, 183 vessels have already been hit. Can you imagine that? 119 in the Sea of Azov and already 64 in the Black Sea. And in Crimea, no one is forgetting about the occupied Crimea either. 103 have already been hit there, power nodes. The throughput capacity of the Kerch ferry crossing is beautiful. It has been reduced. That is, right now it's operating at only 25%. Soon the rest of the ferries will be put out of commission as well. Moreover, the ferries are no longer moving under their own power. Before the operation began, the crossing was serviced by 5 ferries. Now out of them, Yisk and SKS-1 have been destroyed. They cannot be restored. Another ferry, Maria, has been put out of commission. It also will not return to service. Well, as for the ferries Lavrentii and Panagia, after the strikes, are being used as non-self-propelled barges. That is, they are being towed by tugboats. Now they will be burned. Inevitability, punishment, and retribution. And considering what air defense elements were destroyed today, just in one night, somewhere in Novorossiysk, someone is really on edge right now. In other words, there is a systematic exposure and degradation of the entire air defense zone around the Sea of Azov and the Kerch Strait, and of course the eastern coast of the Black Sea. Yeysk and Primorsko-Akhtarsk are the points. It is in this direction that they cover the air approaches to the ports of the Sea of Azov and the Kerch Strait, and also to the Taman Peninsula, and further Novorossiysk and then the anchorage points in the Black Sea. In general, Ukraine is not just hunting individual tankers. Ukraine is systematically dismantling the entire system that protects Russian maritime logistics. So, as they say, stay tuned. And one more important point. Today, another sea tanker was attacked at the marine terminal of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. This is in Novorossiysk. The tanker stopped loading oil. The Kazakh Ministry of Foreign Affairs had previously condemned the attacks by Ukrainian drones on tankers from the terminal. Well, they condemned the drone attacks on tankers, but not the Russian missile attacks on Ukrainian homes. They stayed silent. Obviously, that's because it doesn't affect their wallet. We'll make a note of that. And one more thing. The Kazakh Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that it reserves the right to demand compensation for damages. Seriously? Let's sum things up a bit. Maybe it's not entirely clear to some people. Money is paid, and not a small amount, for the transportation and transshipment of Kazakh oil through Russia. Taxes are paid from this activity. Moreover, the Russian side itself is a major shareholder in this pipeline consortium. Right now, most of the money in Russia is going to support the war. So anything that reduces revenue to the Russian treasury is a good thing. If you continue to trade with the modern-day Hitler who started this war, you automatically accept these risks. What's not clear about that? So when the Kazakh Ministry of Foreign Affairs demands compensation for some kind of damage right to the Kremlin, that's where the very root cause sits, the one that started this whole war. And by the way, I also think that Mr. Tokayev is a very intelligent person. He knows history very well. And so he also knows perfectly well that during World War II, the Allies deliberately destroyed the oil infrastructure of countries supplying Nazi Germany. And you know, that argument didn't work there. The argument that this is another country's oil or this is commercial infrastructure didn't apply. No one granted these facilities any indulgence under such justifications. You can read about it in open sources, for example, about Operation Tidal Wave, how hundreds of US bombers bombed Romania's oil refineries, which were producing fuel for the Reich. And Hungary's refineries were also bombed so that fuel wouldn't be supplied to the Nazis. In general, I think Mr. Tokayev is well aware of these historical analogies. Well, and to the Kazakhs, I'd like to take this opportunity to express my deep gratitude for supporting Ukraine. I know that you support us, and I often see this in the comments. Thank you. And a huge thank you to everyone who supports Ukraine. But tankers, oil depots, refineries, and warehouses are not all there is. Today, the security service of Ukraine hit a very serious target. The target was struck. It was the FSB Coordination Center in the occupied part of the Kherson region, that is, the Special Forces of the Center for Special Operations. Alpha, the SBU Guard Service, struck the Coordination Center and the location of Russian FSB personnel. It was located on the grounds of one of the resorts in the temporarily occupied part of the Kherson region. According to preliminary information, at the time of the operation, there could have been more than 100 servicemen and employees of Russian security forces at the facility. To give you an idea of the scale, intelligence recorded more than 70 vehicles there, armed guards, checkpoints, and engineering barriers. In short, everything was as it should be. Exactly 13 SBU drones hit the target, and each of them had a warhead of up to 200 kilograms. So take that and sign for it. There must have been quite a harvest there, I imagine. I think very soon we'll have the numbers on how the Russian FSB agents were blown to atoms. Here's another simply wonderful piece of news. In Pskov, raids have begun to search for gasoline reserves in homes and garages. The governor initiated these raids. He said that they would identify everyone who is storing fuel, gasoline, diesel, kerosene. In fact, what's happening is a fight against residents who are trying to stock up on gasoline for a rainy day. Listen, back in the USSR, they used to catch and arrest currency dealers, but now in Russia, they're grabbing people for gasoline. Soon we'll see news about how they caught a diesel dealer with 20 liters here, 30 liters there. Well, in general, Russia is rolling downhill, and Putin, like a dung beetle, is pushing it even closer to... He'll soon push it right over the edge. So friends, there's also another piece of news from a State Duma deputy who urged Russians not to give in to panic. There's no need to spread panic-inducing messages or negative information in light of the strikes on facilities, said Anton Gorelkin, first deputy chairman of the State Duma Committee on Information Policy. Indeed, State Duma deputies have no idea why Russians are having problems with fuel. After all, the deputies have their own separate fleet of vehicles. This structure is subordinate to the administrative directorate of the President of the Russian Federation. There's always fuel available. Why are you making such a fuss, Russians? What problems do you have? What more do you need? By the way, here's another monument to Stalin they've put up for you. Be happy. In the Vologda region, they've unveiled the fourth monument to Stalin. The initiative was supported by United Russia, of course, the Communist Party, and New People. What kind of new people supported this? New bastards. The unveiling of a monument to Stalin is just unbelievable. The fourth one, by the way, a monument for what? For mass genocides and executions? So why didn't they put up a monument to Beria right next to him? Is it in your blood to put up monuments to your own executioners? So why not just put it up right away? A monument to Chikatilo, a huge one right there on Red Square, only his head would be Putin's. Well, friends, take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel. Don't forget, I'm asking you very much. Let's help the fighters of the 1st Separate Assault Regiment named after the legendary Da Vinci. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.